Hello, this is the Entrepreneur in You podcast series with me, Dr. Maxwell Ampong. It's all about giving 2-minute nuggets that I pick up in my everyday life as an entrepreneur. Let's see what we have for today. Brought to you by the MIG Business Forum. Welcome to another episode of Entrepreneur in You podcast. Today, this feature is designed to empower you with your full potential, for you to recognize the boundaries that you have, or most importantly, the boundaries that you do not have. And slight background here. I watched this episode titled, let me tell you the full title. It was Tech Force in Africa. The not so glass ceiling, discussing women in tech. That's a full title. And this episode had Otema Yirenkyi, the VP for Salesforce, and she was asked the best career advice she's ever received. And she said, there are no limits. There are no limits. And wow, that just blew my mind. So I was like, I have to call Otema to come back on our podcast. And she's here with us today to tell us about her empowering mantra, there are no limits, there are no limits. Otema Yirenkyi, I'm so glad to have you on the podcast right now.
Thank you so much, Maxwell, for inviting me to be on. I'm excited to get ready and to share some of the nuggets with you and your audience.
Great, very great. Today, I would like to be on the receiving end of the nuggets. But first, let's break the ice with some quickfire questions, if that's okay with you.
Okay, that's totally fine.
So, what's one word that best describes you?
I'm a versatilist.
Versatilist. Can I ask for a little bit of meaning? I know it's supposed to quickfire, but I didn't expect that one.
So, versatilist is someone who is versatile and has done many different things. So, I think you're going to see that as we delve in, that one word does describe me well.
Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I'm an introvert.
You're all over the place. You're like the biggest Otema Yirenkyi.
No, but I think who I am is really an introvert.
Okay. Your favorite time of the day?
The morning.
Any particular reason why?
Because I like to get an early start and get going. Yeah.
Chef, that's one favorite quote you have.
I dwell in possibility by Emily Dickinson. I love that.
Nice. And then, at the risk of starting an online riot, which do you prefer, Nigerian, Senegalese, or Ghanaian jollof?
Why do I keep getting asked this question? And all the answer is going to be Ghanaian jollof. Yay!
So it's settled. The debate is settled. The war is over. Ghana wins. Yes, Ghana wins. Yeah. So we dive right in. Right in. Shall we?
Absolutely. Let's go.
Great. So there are no limits. There are no limits. I don't know why I keep mentioning it twice. I think it's because that's how you presented it. It's so powerful. Can you recall the moment in your career that you first embraced or first came into contact with this mindset?
Absolutely, Maxwell. So it was first, I tell you the story. I was talking with my mentor. I had just decided I wasn't going to go to law school. And for those of you who have Ghanaian parents, I'm sure you know. What? And I couldn't figure out, like, what am I going to do next? And then they said, there are no limits. Go out there and be great at what you believe you can do. And I sort of muddled with that. And then I said, listen, I really want to be in the UN. But I had you can just imagine how mammoth an organization, how do I get in there? And I did what I always used to do in school. I said, let me research, right? Let me understand, where do I want to be? Who do I want to work for? And how do I do that? So I researched the organization I wanted to work for, which was UNIFEM, United Nations International Fund for Women, right? And I realized that the head of the organization at the time was part of a volunteer organization. I signed up for that volunteer organization, and then I participated in their events, and I got what? Access. So research, giving, access. Suddenly, maybe a month or so later, I got the courage to go up to them and say, I'm interested in having a coffee and just learning about your journey. And then they said, you know what? There's an internship coming up at the UN. So finally, something that seemed completely out of my reach, it became into grasp. And that's because I actually took hold of the fact that there were no limits. And if I did the work, which I did, I connected in, with the right people, and I gave back, because I was volunteering at that place. I actually landed what I wanted.
Wow. I'm at the receiving end of the nuggets. I want to speak less. My next question will be, what strategies have you employed to cultivate the mindset of there are no limits?
So anybody who is my mentee and is in my tribe knows I love the interrogative pronouns. Okay. So the first thing we say is, I'm like, who are you? Who? Right. And that is so important. So many people I wanted to be a lawyer. Why? It wasn't who I really was, And so I ask this question and I make them say it. Who are you? Right. And so who, and then the next pronoun, I say to them, what? Right. So what is it that you really want to do? So who are you? What do you want to do? Right. When do you want to do it? Right. And then once you've kind of understood sort of the who, what, where, and when, then comes the how. So I use that repeatedly on myself. So if I'm stuck in my career, I'm like, Otema, is this because this isn't who you really are? Right? And so then I say, when do I want to make a move? Right? And then what do I want to do when I'm making that move? And then how do I do it? So anybody who's in my mentoring chain, I'm sure if they're listening to this, they're like, oh, she's always asking me, who am I? Because it's super important. I'm going to tell you why, because a lot of time, the drivers for our success may not be who we really are. So why did you want to be a lawyer in my case? It's because that's what I believed my family wanted. I believed that would give me the best career, but it wasn't who I was. And so that introspection, so what helps me be always on that there are no limits is I take time for the introspection and I ask myself those very challenging questions. And I just start with those interrogative pronouns, who, what, where, when, then how.
This introspection or this process of introspection and all along the lines of there are no limits, how has adopting these strategies and this mindset impacted your journey within the tech industry?
So specifically in the tech industry, listen, when I joined, there were very few women, right? I'm not going to date myself and give my age, but there were very few women. And so I had to go in there and say, how am I going to get this done? And I think it's super important, specifically someone like me who didn't have a computer science background, who didn't have, I came in with an economics background, right? And I had been in banking. But at the time, the tech industry was looking for functional experts so that when you would go in and deliver a solution for a bank, you understood banking, you understood finance, etc. So I was brought in at the time in a revenue and fiscal division, right? And so they leveraged that. And then they taught me the technologies that I needed to know and understand. And then this is where the versatilist comes in. I moved in from consulting into the data center environment, into sales and marketing. So within my tech career, I have done various things. And I think that's super important for people when they're feeling stuck and they're feeling like I'm limited, right? They feel really limited because of what they've learned or what they feel like they currently know. What I then say to the tribe of people that I mentor, that moment when you're saying to yourself, I'm stuck, how do you get unstuck, right? So first you're doing the introspection. Very importantly, what I'm always doing is I'm learning. When you get stuck because you stop learning, right? And so what I say to my tribe is, and this is super important because the tribe surrounds me. And that's been one of the ways in which things don't feel limited, right? Because I've got mentors and sponsors who are above me. I've got my peers who are also with me. And then I learn a lot from the people I mentor myself, my mentees. So I do that reverse as well. So that completes, if you will, my tribe, right? So it's super important as you're trying to go and you're trying to go limitless. Remember, don't go alone. Go with your tribe.
I think I'm going to quote you on that. Don't go alone, go with the tribe. You've just mentioned how you've applied some of these strategies, but let's get down to at least one example, right? Let's a success story of from your personal life experience when you've applied this mindset and you've seen the results.
Absolutely. So I first gave the one when I was young at the UN, right? But then let me tell you about a time within a very large tech company. And they said, you know what, we're going to go into a new territory, right? And that new territory was Africa. And in doing that, wow, it was a huge task because we didn't have offices in any of the countries. So we were going to open up in 6 countries, but have access in 16. And so it really felt like, wow, can we do this? And I remember I was on planes all the time. This country, Tanzania, Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, we were always on the move. And I have to be honest, I couldn't see how we were getting to the end, how we were going to drive the business. I did feel limited. But then I realized, you know what? Start small. And in our data centers, we started to work with a series of smaller banks that we knew that we can build them up through into a digital transformation story. But how do you do that when they don't have the infrastructure? And that became the way. So starting small, don't keeping the end in mind, right? Of course, but start small. And one of the things we did was we started small and then we grew with those banks. So you start small, grow, because now what? You're scaling them. And it should be around an achievable vision. That's what then helped us. So then you're starting to scale. You've got something going in Ghana now. You've got something in Nigeria. You've got something in Tanzania. And then what? The sky's the limit. Because you've got your proof points of success by starting small. So it's a very known strategy in sales. You're talking about landing and expanding. You got to land. You know, it's not about taking the whole thing at once. Sometimes it's not possible. But then that gets people stuck because they're looking at that big end. Start small. And that's what helps you. At least it's helped me, starting in one country, starting with one customer, starting with one success. That gave me the opportunity to start what? Driving, moving, growing, and suddenly it's limitless.
Over 25 years in tech, I think start small would be one of the things that, let's say, our audience would have least expected to hear from a big tech. Because it's a lot for a lot of these guys. It's go big or go home, and start small sounds practical. And I would like you to give us one of the biggest misconceptions about the industry within which you work, so we know what is different and what isn't.
I think one of the big misconceptions is if you are not, let's say when you're starting out, if you're not a computer science, if you haven't studied AI or machine learning or cybersecurity or something, tech isn't for you. But remember, tech is for lawyers because they focus on our IP and contracting. Tech is for salespeople because we need to drive. Once you've developed the solution, you've got to go out there and get customers.
Sure.
Tech is for project managers who are focused on delivering and implementing these solutions that we sell. And tech is for innovators who are going to develop new products. And it's also for the coders, the developers. So that's the biggest misconception, right? And I think over time, it's actually, people are seeing that, right? That technology is much broader and the scope is much broader than you think. So if you aren't in, let's say, a computer science background, and even for mid-level career people, go in with the skills you have. And then, of course, build your technical understanding and capabilities to be able to be effective. That's what I would say. I know that people say, oh, everything small's not sexy. It really is, because you got to get started. I didn't land where I am today from here. And that's the reality. And I feel like it's a misconception that people say, oh, wow, I know, I just made it. No, you didn't. Right? Tell the truth.
I almost spilled my water right now.
Tell the truth, right? And I'm telling the truth, right? This is 25 years in the making. This is not, I just made it yesterday, or I just did this one thing and I made it. So just pick this one nugget and you're going to be a millionaire. It's not true. And if anything, I like to be honest about the reality of how hard it is. It's not easy. It's long nights. It's working hard. It's grit. It's determination. It's repeatedly asking yourself those interrogative pronouns: the who, the what, the where, the why. How am I going to get this done? And be unrelenting in your learning. That's one of the things that I think, if I'm going to say to my younger self, keep learning, keep growing. And that's something that has really helped me to be a versatilist, because our industry has changed and adapted and shifted. And if I wasn't constantly learning, if I wasn't constantly educating myself on new technologies, if I wasn't educating myself on new approaches or new thinking, I wouldn't be where I am. And so that's what you do. I think when you get stuck, it means perhaps you're getting stale and you need to keep learning.
Guys, Otema is like one of less than 3 people that I call whenever I need to get shaken up. See, right now, I'm sure you're shaking up right now. She's so motivated. She's so motivating. And I hope I'm a member of your tribe.
Yes.
I say that.
Yes, you can get in the tribe.
And I think I would like to her to share with her tribe and also the audience. How do you stay motivated? I mean, you've maintained a momentum and some kind of energy and motivation. 25 years experience within the tech industry, and it's big tech. How do you stay motivated?
Listen, I am a person of faith. I have to be honest that it is my faith in God that has allowed me to maintain the momentum, because it's not easy, right? And then secondly, the family and the tribe, because there are days when I've wanted to hang up my towel. Absolutely. I'm not going to lie to you. There have been moments when I'm on a plane and I've been flying for, how many days, moving from here to here, and you're saying, I can't do it. But then the faith and the tribe keeps you going, right? And then I think about, my dad always said to me, it's a privilege where you're sitting, the position you're in, and to go and do your best, because people are watching. And I'm not doing it because they're watching to say, oh, she failed or whatever, but to maybe in that moment give a bit of inspiration to a young woman or something who feels, because many of the places, you would have heard this in the Tech Force podcast, many times I would be the only person in the room.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a chair for me. And so when you have to pull up the chair to put yourself in that place, you have to be motivated. So if you got to take, many times, if I'm going to go into an audience when I've had to speak or do a presentation before hundreds of people, I say that quick prayer, and I call upon the strength that I know that God gives me. And then I go out. I was recently at an event in Greece before a huge audience, and the screen was black. We had rehearsed, we had practiced, everything had happened. And I got there and I was going to do the sort of the keynote. And what I always do, this is about that preparedness and research. I had committed it, as they say in Ghana, me born baba. Right? I had memorized it. So when the technology failed, that research and preparation, I delivered it. And that comes from, as I said before, research, preparing. It's not easy, but you do it. I stayed up. I wrote the notes. I memorized. I did it. And then, as I said that quick prayer. And the tribe, I had some key people sitting in the audience in the front. I looked at them and I delivered.
Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
You said something that I want to bring you back to. Sometimes you're on a plane and kind of it hits you. Number one, makes you feel it humanizes you to me, because to me you're like the superstar who's always supercharging all of us and telling us we can do it. So what are some of the strategies that can help our audience also supercharge their careers? Because you are supercharging everyone else whilst you have to supercharge yourself, and like you said, you also have guys on above you who supercharge you. So what are some of the strategies that our audience can use to supercharge themselves when they find themselves at that vehicle or at that point in time that they feel, what am I gonna do? Yeah.
Absolutely. So identify for yourself the things that allow you to supercharge. So for me, it's finding those quiet moments. So I go on retreats. And I just recently went on a retreat to Oxford, and it's a beautiful countryside place, and I walk, it's meditative. But if I can't go there, I find the quiet spaces, in my house or in my garden, and then I'm still, right? And I take out all the noise, and then it allows me to take that breath and do what I need to do. So find out that thing that energizes you or re-energizes you. So for me, because I'm an introvert, being very still, being quiet, and then starting to sort of map out what I'm going to do next. So I really recommend, ask yourself what energizes you. You've got to figure out what energizes you. Coupled with that, we love to go hiking. That's very energizing. I spend time with friends. I'm reading. So that's a key thing for uplifting, is to finding those things that energize you depending on who you are. Secondarily, I have mentors, but I also have coaches. Okay. So someone who coaches me is helping me to achieve a specific outcome. And they're going to be my, what they call accountability partner. And so I'm going to say, if I'm attempting to achieve, maybe at a time I remember I was looking for a different role. I had 2 accountability partners. They worked with me. And we said, okay, and this is the 6-week plan. We were very structured, and they spoke with me every week, and they kept me accountable to my goals and helped me think through that. So remember, what energizes you, secondly, have an accountability partner, someone who's going to keep you on track and focused to achieving your goals.
Is that a power skill? Because I've heard you say power skills so many times in so many on so many episode podcasts and on stage. I would like you to explain what they are and how we can develop and identify our own individual power skills. Because it sounded like a power skill, but I'm not sure. That's what I'm asking.
So power skills are behaviors that enable us to succeed. Okay. So if you think about it, a really strong power skill is active listening. Are you an active listener? Are you someone who is an effective communicator? Can you be a conflict resolution type person? Can you manage conflict? Are you someone who has empathy? Can you negotiate? And on and on. So these are skills that help individuals to succeed. Back in the day, they were called your soft skills, right? Mm-hmm. Communicating for impact is a power skill. Empathy is a power skill. So somebody who's empathic, let's say, in a meeting, is able to diffuse conflict because they are able to empathize with the people who are challenged and bring up specific solutions. Someone who's an effective communicator or who communicates for impact can deliver a message that is both inspiring and motivating, but also gets to the point, right? Negotiation is a very strong power skill. So I've just named a few. Some people who are very creative in their thinking and summarizing to develop and put forth a notion. That's a power skill. Now, I would say to people, when you lean into your power skills, you're leaning into your strength. And so many times when we are attacking a problem or we are trying to achieve a specific goal, we're always talking about, well, how do I improve what I have a gap in? Recently, I was coaching one of my mentees, and she was giving me a litany of things that she's not good at, that's why she's not achieving. And I said to her, tell me what you're good at, and let's double down on those things. Because the areas that you're weak, you can leverage other people, you can leverage tools and systems to strengthen that. But what you are really strong in, let's double down on that and increase. So you see, if you think about the scale, so many of us are super focused on, oh, I'm not that good at negotiating. And you spend all this time learning negotiating skills, but you're a great communicator. Why not improve your communication skills and strengthen what you're already powerful in, and then leverage others for where you might have a gap? And it's a different mindset. It's a mindset shift. And it's in that there are no limits, because when you're thinking about limitation, you're thinking about what you don't have.
True. What you said about people concentrating on what they don't have makes me again want to. I see you as a superstar. I've been telling you this for years. So what has been one of the most challenging projects you've ever been through, and what lessons did you hear from it? Because one thing that I've taken away from you today is you don't need to go big, even if you are at a big, institution, or even if the project is big, it's one step after the other. That's actionable advice that we can take home and actually act on. So for entrepreneurs and for our audience that are going through challenges with their projects, have you ever faced a challenging project? What are the most challenging projects you've ever faced? And not necessarily how did you get over it? What are the lessons that it taught you to go through those challenges, that particular challenge within your career?
Yeah, so I mean, we had worked tirelessly at a big tech company. We signed a massive agreement. Okay, I mean, it took us an 18-month sales cycle, and we solutioned for this country. We traveled in and we did the handshake. We even, met with the president. I mean, we were like, bam, we got this. You know what I mean? After 18 months of struggle, I mean, it was just like amazing. And then to start, it wouldn't start, right? We couldn't, we assembled, we were trying to get their teams to work, and we were trying to get it was just a nightmare. I don't even want to get into all the difficulties and challenges. But what we learned from that is, because we had gone so big, right? And we had gone and signed up to so many things, but on the customer side, they didn't have the ability to deliver on their components. And so therefore we were waiting and waiting and waiting. So what I learned there, that was a great example. Instead of like having a huge contract across multiple government agencies, etc., maybe starting with one and executing that successfully. So if you're an entrepreneur, yes, you might have this big aspiration. And so it's like, hey, I got this big contract to go into this company. Think about your product, right? Are you ready in the production cycle to meet that demand? Number one. Number two, do you have the brand identity and awareness of that to get ready? So the customer on this project that, obviously failed, wasn't ready. And they didn't have that state of readiness. And we were so excited to sign that big deal, because then they had problems with getting the funding. So they had the money, but then through their systems, this particular country had restrictions on foreign exchange and all this kind of stuff. We hadn't done our homework there. So as an entrepreneur, are you doing your homework? Are you effectively planning on both sides, double checking? But you're so excited about that big signing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then it collapses. Okay. So my lesson on that project was that equally doing our homework on that customer side. We had done the due diligence, all the stuff that you standardly do on these large, complex deals. But there were small elements like that transfer of funds that took almost like 5 months to get that across the line, right? We didn't check that. So those details, so I will say that what I learned, those small details, and then maybe starting small, even though small's beautiful. Because guess what? You're going to learn. We would have learned that it takes 5 months to transfer. And you're going to learn that, let's say, on $1 million rather than 20 million.
Yes.
Okay. So that's what I'm trying to say about that small is beautiful. It gives you the learnings. It gives you the opportunity to kind of work with that customer, understand what their challenges are, and then you succeed. And then, so I say start small and then scale.
So many actionable points we are getting from this podcast episode. Like I said, it's when we started, I said it was designed to empower our audience. I've taken so much from this episode. Start small, develop your power skills. I envision you in Greece with a black background going, okay, am I ready? And you're like, yes, I'm ready. I prepared for it. Therefore, you have to be prepared for these things. You are in tech. You are the VP for Salesforce, this huge tech company. Do you need to have like a math or science background in order to get in tech? I'm trying to make sure the audience connects with what you're saying, and it's not like, oh, she's in a tech company, that's why she's saying all of these things, and So you earlier said you are from econs, but frankly, a lot of people that I know think you have to have a computer science background or an engineering background before you get into tech. You've already made a few comments on that. What do you say about that?
So as I said, you don't. I mean, it's very simple. Come
really
with the skills you have, because remember, a large tech company has many needs. Okay. And I think that's the important thing. Even on the supplier side, let's say you're an entrepreneur. What can you supply a tech company? Right? So it doesn't mean that. So on the supply side, let's say maybe you're supplying them equipment. Maybe you're supplying them, even catering services as an example, right? So think about it on the whole ecosystem. Maybe you're a trainer. You can learn and be a facilitator training the content, right? Because you could be training leadership skills within a tech company. So see tech as, yes, there are many, many skills that are required that are technical, the developers, that whole portion. There's the sales people, there's the marketing people, systems engineers, et cetera, et cetera. But don't feel that because you're not in a math and science track, if you're a student, or if you're already in career, that you can't make a transition into a tech company. I think that's really, because there's a tech career and then there's also being in a tech company. And there's also being a supplier to a tech company. And that's all within the ecosystem. And I think that's an important distinction to make.
That clears it up, because I think it ties into your no limits thing, where regardless of the skill set or your particular profession, don't think tech because you are not in the science or engineering background, you cannot get into a tech company. I think I would love to round up, but one last question before we round up. You mentioned something about younger Otema. So what would you tell a younger Otema Yirenkyi? Like, if Otema Yirenkyi was listening to a podcast that was being that the guest was the Otema Yirenkyi we are speaking about now, what would you tell her to have that impact you'd want her to have? There are no limits. What would you tell a younger Otema Yirenkyi right now?
So I would tell a younger Otema, build your own table, right? Because I think I spent many, many years trying to get a seat at the table, then trying to be at the head of the table. And I would say to the young Otema, build your own table.
Otema, you've been fantastic. Thank you so much for this illuminating fireside chat. And how you've embraced this. There are no limits. There are no limits mentality. I say it twice because I see it as a meditation. There are no limits. There are no limits.
It's a mantra, right?
It's a mantra. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It is. And
but say it and believe it.
yes,
say it and believe it.
Yes, you've been fun. And usually I'll give the closing remarks. I don't even want to give the closing remarks. Our audiences are usually entrepreneurs from the formal and informal sector and business owners all across Ghana and Africa. And I would want you to leave us with the closing remarks that would be a catalyst for their success. Looks like you are not just Otema in tech, you are Otema. There are no limits. That's what you are. And what would you tell our audience right now?
So I would just repeat that there are no limits. And I think the advice I would give to my younger self, I want to give it to the audience. Build your own table, right? And that means for yourself, creating that limitless life you want. So that's what I would say to my audience that has joined us. There are no limits. Go out and build that table.
Perfect. There you have it, guys. Nothing to add there. I will be looking forward to your feedback. I'll forward them to Otema. Cheerio. See you guys later. Thank you so much, Otema. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Brought to you by the MIG Business Forum.